pay my respects to elders past and present and to any Aboriginal people who may be in attendance at today's meeting. Today, the public meeting will be recorded and will be placed on Council's website following the meeting. The panel members today to consider the matter that we have before us. Myself, Gary West, I am the Independent Chair, and we're supported by the expert members of Peter Romy and Deb Laidlaw, and the community representatives, Mia Margaret Chow. The panel operates in terms of a code of conduct and operating guidelines, which have been modified to facilitate the effective functioning of this panel during the COVID-19 precautions, the temporary changes that are available on Council's website. The terms of the Code of Conduct and our general declarations are provided by all members. However, specific declarations of interest have been declared by members in relation to the matter that the panel will be hearing today. The panel today is to consider a DA at 5 Baden Street, Coogee. We have a number of people who are registered to speak, including a councillor, a number of objectors and representatives of the applicant. So today's order, we will hear first from the councillor and then members of the public and then the applicant. Speakers have up to 3 minutes to present, and that includes all individuals and the applicant. If you are registered to speak, please note that your presentation will be recorded. I will be conducting the timing, so you'll get a message from me when you've got 30 seconds to go to wind up. The panel has been provided with a copy of the assessment report and as well as all submissions that were prepared and presented to Council through the public exhibition of the DA. So therefore, there's no need for speakers to repeat all those points. Concentrate on the issues that you feel the panel should take into account. Each speaker is to be heard in silence while they're addressing the panel, and as a courtesy, and I ask that courtesy be respected and observed throughout the meeting. There's to be no personal criticism directed at any speaker or council staff, and any such criticism would be contrary to the panel's code of conduct and cannot be accepted. The panel may ask questions of speakers to clarify our understanding of what is being said. After all, we've heard from all the speakers, the panel will adjourn and progress to debating the matters and make our determination. If more information is required, the panel may defer the decision for either a further public meeting or for it to be dealt with electronically. The panel decision and the audio recording will be placed on Council's website as soon as possible, but usually within 7 days of the meeting. So again, I remind you, no recording of this meeting other than the official recording. And I now turn to the speakers list and ask Councillor Nielsen, please. Over to you, Councillor Nielsen.
Thank you very much, Chair and panel members. My name is Councillor Cathy Nielsen. I agree with the officer's recommendation for refusal. The report is well written and thorough. I don't need to restate the many reasons. In summary, my main issues of concern are the non-compliance of wall and building heights, loss of views and amenity impacts, and that the proposal is not compatible with the desired future character of the locality. And just as an aside, I note there was no streetscape analysis, and the value of the works is estimated at $3,383,396. I just put that in as a comment. I urge you to refuse the application for all the carefully stated reasons in the officer's report and any of the additional matters raised by the objectors. I think the applicant needs to go back to the drawing board. Thank you, Chair and panel.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Nielsen. The next person is Bev Hall. Bev, you there? Is Bev not? Yeah, Bev not there?
No, Chair. We are just trying to track down Bev.
Okay, we'll move on. Dr. Safini? Doctor?
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes,
it's actually my name is Bev Potter.
Okay.
Can you hear me? Yeah, good. My name is Beate Giuseppi, and I live in 7 Baden Street. The main objection which I'm going to address is the plan to build an underground car park at 5 Baden Street because of the very real potential from excavation work to damage the foundations and stability of our building at 7 Baden Street. Our concern is based on the following facts: that first, there's no other underground car park in Baden Street, and there must be very good geotechnical reasons for that. Famer Gardens, the large apartment building at 23 Baden Street, has no underground parking. Its parking is on ground and upper level only. Similarly, the first house in Baden Street, whose address is 103 Beach Street, in its conversion placed the garages on the ground level. Looking at the geotechnical investigation report accompanying this development application, we can see on page 5 that the report about soil and rock executability is speculative at very best and holds many warnings of the effects of vibration and intensive work. In 2017, excavation work was with inherent vibration was carried out for an underground cable in Dinningham Park, and even further drilling and excavation were at quite a distance from our building, and on a much smaller scale, it all the same resulted in damage to our building. It caused fractures in the foundations, caused the ceiling to buckle, and in one unit, a ceiling to crash down. The excavations of 5 Baden Street would be just adjacent to us and are bound to cause substantial damage to our building. We therefore ask for that no development application to be given to underground excavations. Also, impact of the extent on the immediate neighborhood is obvious to the quality of our lives. When the drilling work was carried out in 2017, it gave us a taste of living in a building that is shaking and windows rattling for hours on end. And the excavation of the car park in 5 Baden Street would be infinitely worse. We therefore ask for the following: cancellation of the plan to furnish 5 Baden Street with an underground car park, risk assessment by an independent structural engineer prior to development approval, including inspection of foundation material to confirm allowable bearing pressures, dilapidation report and insurance guarantees, regular geotechnical inspections during demolition and construction, guarantee that remediation and compensation for any damage to our building will be made promptly, request of a risk review by an independent structural engineer prior to DA approval, request of regular geotechnical inspections during the demolition and construction phase. Thank you. That's it.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, this is me handling technology. Sorry, forgive me for a minute. Okay, sorry about that.
Did you get my last 2 points? Because I felt it was a bit drowned out.
It was. Please just repeat those.
Just the last 2 points, yeah. Request of a risk review by an independent structural engineer prior to DA approval, and request of a regular geotechnical inspection during the demolition and construction phase. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Can I ask everybody to, I think if you turn your videos off and just leave the audio on, you will find that your presentation will be better, because sometimes you lose contact, and unless your streaming is very strong, you will find that you will sometimes freeze. So if it's possible, we can still hear you. That's the important thing. I think hearing you is more important than seeing you, with due respects to everybody that's there. Are there any questions from the panel members of our first presenter? No? No? Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much. Our next presenter is Christina Vantos. Christina, yes.
Hello. Hey. Yeah. So good afternoon. My name is Christina, and I'm the owner-occupier of Unit 3 at 7 Baden Street, Coogee, which is located next to the subject site. My objections to the proposal are based on the following: 1, stability of our building; during and after work. 2, loss of amenity, namely solar access. 3, disruption to Baden Street and adjoining buildings during demolition and construction. The impacts on our life quality, as well as interference to the streetscape of Baden Street. I'm going to focus mainly on loss of amenity and namely solar access. So amenity, access to sunlight, visual and acoustic privacy and outlook. There are a number of concerns for loss of amenity caused by the proposed design. 7 Baden Street currently enjoys a direct natural late afternoon light on the west side of our building and even some early afternoon light. This is the only sunlight we enjoy on the west side of the building, so it's very precious. My main objection to the proposed design is that it reduces the offset area at the front and thereby removes this access to direct sunlight. As aerial street views show, blocks in Baden Street have alternate setbacks, one forward, the next back, to reduce overshadowing and vary the monotony of a linear streetscape. The existing building at number 5 is set back from our building with a small porch entrance. This affords natural light, which will be lost if the new building is allowed to extend its front boundary. The existing building also has a patio on top of the second floor at the rear, which allows early afternoon on the west side and the entrance foyer of our building. The proposed design will extend the back construction to the full height, adding to overshadowing and cancelling that natural sunlight, and therefore limiting our solar access, thus making our building non-compliant to the solar access standards and requirements for a residential apartment. Solar access requirements in SCPP 65 states that living rooms and private open spaces of at least 70% of apartments in a building receive a minimum of 2 to 3 hours of direct sunlight between 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. at midwinter, and that only a maximum of 15% of apartments receive no direct sunlight between 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. at midwinter. The proposed design will allow less than the 2 to 3 hours of solar access to less than 70% of apartments in our building, and more than 15% of apartments in our building will have no solar access due to the reduced front setback and height increase of the proposed development. The applicant has followed design principles that are advantageous to them, however, they're less advantageous for adjoining buildings, particularly ours, and they fail to comply to the standards under the following clauses. 4.3, height of
30 seconds.
3.42 side setbacks, 5.1 solar access and shadowing, 4.4 external wall height and ceiling height, 5.6 safety and securities. All of these failings contribute to our loss of amenity. No other building on Baden Street has been demolished and rebuilt, and this has made Baden Street a unique hidden gem in one of Sydney's most popular suburbs. In consideration of these factors, I urge a request that the applicant revise the proposal so as to retain the existing wider front offset space in the new building and minimise loss of amenity to neighbouring buildings. Thank you.
Thank you, Christina. Well done there at the end. Panel members, any questions, Christina, at this stage? No? Hang on, Deb, do you know? Just shake your head no. Okay, thank you.
Okay. All right, go Meg. I'm next. Okay.
Yep.
Now, I'm Meg Hart, and I'm the owner-occupier of Unit 4 in 7 Baden Street, which directly adjoins the redevelopment. And I work mainly from home, so I'm going to be seriously affected by the demolition, construction, and the structural features of the proposed building at the moment, the new building. I share the concerns already expressed about the redevelopment, namely the stability and safety of the adjoining buildings, and the disruption to the street and the streetscape and adjacent properties. But I'm going to focus on the third main concern that we have, which is loss of personal amenity, reduction in quality of life, and potential health impacts during demolition and construction. Firstly, I'd like to say that while I appreciate that the applicant has hired an architect to create an attractive contemporary design, the loss of the iconic and gracious old building at number 5 will change the character of our area forever. And it seems to contradict Council's aim of recognising and preserving our special character area and values, as so many of Coogie's heritage era buildings are being replaced by uniform modern structures these days. It's a pity renovation isn't considered a more environmentally and culturally sound option, as it is in other countries. If the redevelopment goes ahead as currently proposed, my home at Unit 4, 7 Baden Street, will be subject to serious loss of amenity and potential health hazards, and I'm going to emphasise those.
loss of solar access, as Christina's already mentioned, and loss of visual outlook and acoustic privacy, but also dust and pollution from toxic substances in the demolition process, even potentially asbestos. We have no idea about that. And noise pollution and prolonged disturbance. And I refer you to a 2011 WHO study citing the overwhelming evidence that exposure to prolonged or excessive noise causes a range of adverse health problems, including stress, poor concentration, hearing loss, high blood pressure, and sleep difficulties. As already mentioned, Baden Street residents have already had a taste of the impacts of loud and prolonged construction work during the laying of an undersea cable in Dunningham Reserve in 2017. This work went on for 5 months, despite assurances it was only going to take a few weeks, during which time we were subjected to 10 hours a day of drilling noise and vibrations, 5 days a week. Fracture lines appeared in our buildings and ceilings collapsed. For older people, families with children, people working from home or with illness, this causes severe
30 seconds, 30 seconds later.
So what we're looking for is very strict guidelines and restrictions on construction hours and conditions, and measures to minimise dust and any pollution from asbestos or other things. And I just want to say in completing, Coogee is fast becoming a construction zone, losing much of its unique character and causing untold stress and sadness to residents. And I urge you to take this into account in your deliberations. Surely post-COVID recovery is about community health and well-being, not just about profit and development. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions, panel members? No? Okay, thank you. Is Bev Hall online at all? No? Okay.
No, Chair, we've had no luck.
Righto, okay. Thank you. So we now move to representative of the applicant, Bernard Moroz. Bernard, are you there to speak first?
Hello, panel. I'm Bernard Moroz. I'm the town planner, and here to my right, I've got Joseph Curry, who was the design architect. In brief, panel, we deem the proposal a considered response to the setting. In terms of the volume of the development, as it will present along Baden Street, what will be interpreted from the public domain is subservient to that, what it exists on the site. In terms of the existing building on the site, it was confirmed by Council's heritage officer that the building has no heritage value, and there was no need for actual preservation of the subject building. Again, panel, I do believe that the clause 4.6 variation is just, and what we have provided soundly demonstrates that there are a number of site-specific environmental planning grounds justifying the very minor and centrally located height breach being limited to the lift overrun. Also, panel, I do feel like that the view loss discussion within Council's report it is a little deceiving. It does actually state that there's a severe level of view loss to properties from Acadia Street. The report doesn't acknowledge specifically from which property. It just says from the properties because they're in a position where all their views are provided across the subject site. To say within the report that there's a severe view loss, but not providing exactly from where this view loss results, we find it a little bit deceiving because we have sought council. We have requested that they provide us detail of where this view loss is being incurred, so that we can, I guess, further examine the extent of view loss. But this wasn't provided to us, so we cannot confirm or deny, where this view loss is coming from. But we haven't been provided with any evidence, and I do not think the council report does so either. Panel, what I'll probably do too, I've got the design architect here on my right, is probably to give you a quick summary in terms of the rationale behind the design and what was sought to be achieved. And then we'll be open to any further questions and happy to address any of the objectors' concerns.
You've only got 30 seconds left.
Okay, I'll hand over to our architect here.
All right, I'll just touch base on a few points, and I'm hoping that you have been provided with the amended documentation. We do have legal advice and a letter from Stephen Beverley. in relation to floor space ratios and the calculation of GFA. In the documentation has been revised to reflect his interpretation of the definition, which would satisfy council's concerns in relation to the floor space ratio. In relation to overall building height and SEP 65 compliance, I know council's trying to enforce a 3.1 metre floor-to-floor height. We've had recent approvals at number 90 Marine Parade and number 338 Clovelly Road in Clovelly, both with a 3 metre floor-to-floor height.
Joseph, just to be fair to everybody, all the other speakers kept to their time, and you were there to answer questions. So I've got to enforce this. I know that you'll be there. That's the end of the formal timing. What I'm going to do is now ask panel members to ask their questions of both of you to get their clarifications. So if panel members, if you could unmute when you wish to raise your question first. Thank you. Who wants to go first?
I'll go first.
Peter. Right. Peter's first. Okay. Thank you.
My question is for Bernard or Joseph. In regard to the proposed realignment or bypassing of the sewer, can you please explain if you did have an approval on the basis of the plans submitted, how would you proceed to resolve those that matter with the authority?
Peter, it's Bernard here. Sorry, prior to Joseph answering that question, I forgot to mention we would like to not seek approval, but rather a deferral to enable us to amend the actual plans to reflect the legal advice we've received in terms of FSR. It's very minor works, but it will just mean that the proposal wholly complies with the FSR controls as detailed in the letter by Dr. Steve Berveling. So I'll have Joseph actually answer the question now in terms of the sewer.
So just to go back to...
Hang on.
Can I just respond to what you just said?
Yes.
So I've got a bit of an echo there. Your legal advice is from who, sorry? And what's it in regard to?
Has the panel been provided with this legal advice?
The answer is yes, I've seen it. It's at the rear of the package that was put to us yesterday. Yes.
Okay. Thank you. It just refers to the calculation of breezeways there, Peter, and it will just mean that we need to make some really minor adjustments to the proposal in order to, I guess, comply with FSR. Originally, as it was provided, it was deemed that it was compliant also. However, it was more subjective. But this will just confirm compliance with FSR.
Okay. Thank you. We did receive that. I misunderstood. I thought you'd said there'd been some supplementary
okay.
input.
No, that's no problem. Thanks for that, Peter. I'll have Joseph answer the question in relation to the sewer.
So in relation to the sewer diversion works that would be required as part of the development application and design process, we did have dealings with our Sydney Water Coordinator, Olsen Infrastructure, and the Director, Torsten Olsen. We have worked up a scheme that he believes would be compliant. However, we can't lodge, if we're to lodge a tap-in approval now, all it's going to say is that we would need to liaise with the coordinator. For him to formally lodge the diversion works with Sydney Water, we need some sort of consent, whether it's a deferred commencement or operational consent. Through that process, we'd then get a checklist from our coordinator, start preparing structural design drawings. He'll prepare his Sydney Water diversion documentation, which would all be submitted to Sydney Water for approval, and which is all going to be required prior to the commencement of any works or prior to the issue of any construction certificate. In principle, we have been advised that it does work. However, as we all know, with Sydney Water, the codes and requirements are constantly changing, so we couldn't be given a formal letter from our coordinator saying that he could 100% guarantee that this would be approved.
Okay, so just to clarify, you're saying that you, in the absence of a development approval with or deferred commencement, that you can't provide any surety in regard to whether Sydney Water would be comfortable, would accept your proposed solution to the sewer diversion?
No, whilst we, as I said, whilst we have had that advice and we have worked up the diversion design with our Sydney Water coordinator, it is all subject to lodgement and approval by Sydney Water, which cannot be done without a consent number from the council for the development.
Not necessarily approval, but in principle approval or some kind of indication of whether they would be amenable to the proposal or not.
Well, we did provide that high-level correspondence from our coordinator saying that subject to Sydney Water approval, it's of his belief that it's that it could be approved, but to put that down on his letterhead, he obviously didn't feel comfortable because government bodies and requirements are constantly evolving and changing. So without a formal correspondence with Sydney Water, he didn't feel comfortable to physically write it down from an insurance's point of view. But with any development application, this is usually something that is resolved at construction certificate stage. We did get that high-level advice and work up a scheme for the diversion as part of the development application because we do understand its importance in the overall scheme of the development.
Thank you.
Okay. Anything further on that issue? Deb, did you want to raise anything on that issue? No?
I'm just a little bit unclear about the process. Your coordinator, your advisor said to be contacted. Well, starting off, is it your coordinator who said that in principle it should work, or was it Sydney Water who said that it should work?
Our Sydney Water coordinator. As an architect, or with Sydney Water, a Sydney Water coordinator is the only person who's allowed to liaise directly with Sydney Water when it comes to these types of matters. So
sorry, the advice hasn't come from Sydney Water, it's come from the coordinator that you've...
Correct.
Okay. Now, he or she said this process can be started subject to a fee of $100, and that will simply refer the project back to water servicing coordinators such as ourselves.
Correct.
And then they go on to say...
They need a consent number in order to be able to start the formal process with Sydney Water past that tapping referral.
Because I believe there has been precedent for Sydney Water to give because this is quite a significant diversion, not simply in terms of the rerouting, but the actual fact that it does have those sort of relatively unusual angles for a sewer, 90-degree turns. Surely it should be, and it can be demonstrated there has been precedent that you could get an in-principle approval. That would be the sensible way of going about it, wouldn't it? Because the problem is if at the end of the day Sydney Water says you can't do that, it could completely modify your design approach to the site.
Well, we'd be happy for it to be approved as a deferred commencement subject to Sydney Water approval. At least that way we do have some sort of consent in order to be able to lodge with Sydney Water formally and start that formal process.
Okay. All right, thank you. We'll certainly give that matter our consideration and probably have some further questions of council when we get to our deliberation stage on that particular matter. Further questions? Deb, did you?
Just as the FSR, we'll have a look at, but I think you mentioned that, that it's consistent with the streetscape of Baden Street. Have you done an analysis from the southern end of the beach? Because obviously as you move away from the site, the three-dimensional form and the roof of the building, the flat roof, fourth level will become apparent from those more distant views. Have you done that analysis to see how that fit in with the existing streetscape's character?
Not from too far away, but we do also know that there is an approval at number 9 to 11 Baden Street, which is a couple of doors down, that does incorporate a flat roof and a fourth story as well. And that's probably one of the more recent approvals along Baden Street. And just on another note, actually, it does have basement car parking approved as part of that process as well.
Okay. Mayor, do you have any questions you want to? No? Right. Debbie, no further questions?
No, not for me.
No. Peter, nothing?
Oh, just one more in regard to the and this is for Joseph. In regard to your proposed methodology for achieving all your services, lighting, smoke detectors in AC and everything else within that 300 millimetre zone, concrete off-form slab design. Could you talk a little bit about that, please?
Yep. So
it's obviously very tight.
We have had this approved recently in Randwick Council for a few of our projects, particularly number 90 Marine Parade Maroubra and 338 Clovelly Road in Clovelly. The way that we've designed the building is that the majority of the wet areas will stack over one another or be located over hallways or kitchens where we would retain a bulkhead of 2.4 metres floor to ceiling for your non-habitable zones. That allows for your mechanical works, or your plumbing and all your electrical to run in those bulkhead zones to access each of the different rooms in the floor plan. A 250mm concrete slab could be designed up to the maximum, but based on previous experience, we believe a 200 thick slab would be sufficient in this scenario. Lights would be surface mounted through track lighting. If you have a look actually at drawing DA505 in our documentation, and 506. Yeah, so 505 has got photos of the project at 90 Marine Parade. So downlights in the bulkhead zones and surface-mounted track lighting or pendant lights in the main habitable rooms, or wall lights in bedrooms. And then a 50mm floor finish would essentially allow a maximum of 2750, but realistically a 2.7 metre clear ceiling height in your main living, dining and bedroom areas would be achieved.
Sorry,
Let's go, Deb.
Just on that 9 to 11 Baden Street, I just wanted to clarify, was that the 2013 consent?
Just going to it now.
And has it been commenced?
I'm not entirely sure if it's been commenced or not, but it does have a basement and it does have a flat roof. From my understanding, the CC works had commenced, but I'm not entirely sure to be able to say one way or another if construction has started or if a formal construction certificate has been provided.
Okay, thank you. I can see I've got Bev Hall has joined the meeting. Is that correct, Bev? No response. I thought I could see that she was there. Okay, look.
Bev, you're on mute.
So, right, Bev, could you just hold online for a moment, right, before I ask you to present to the panel? Just one question of our representatives of the applicant. The package that you sent through to us had a series of updated plans. They're the ones that you obviously believe will make the substantial changes to the FSR. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. That's correct, Gary. So these plans were provided, I guess, for discussion with the panel. The changes are actually quite minor, but in terms of FSR compliance, it will just mean that there's no further discussion in terms of FSR, whether it complies or not. And that's why we've also provided that legal advice from Dr. Stephen Berveling to back up what we were doing. And therefore, we'd like to seek a deferral and allowing us to amend the plans to reflect those that the revised plans we have before the panel now.
Okay, well, certainly we'll consider that as part of our deliberations.
Thank you, Gary.
Thank you. No further questions from the panel then of the applicants. Bev, can I now come to you? I know this is a bit unusual, but if I can come to you, Bev, to just make your presentation that you were not able to make earlier. Yeah.
I beg your pardon. I'm just a local resident, and there is a height restriction on that part of the street, and I would like to see the height restrictions adhered to for aesthetic reasons. That is all I really wanted to say. Thank you very much.
Okay, Bev. Sorry about that. Normally we have you come in earlier, but
beg your pardon. My fault. And
technical difficulties.
Thank you.
Okay. Look, thank you everybody for your participation. This public meeting will now close, and the panel members will log back in under a different session for our deliberations on this matter. And obviously we have some matters that are going to be dealt with by electronic determination as well. Thank you everybody for your participation.
Thank you everyone.
Thanks panel members. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.